we're going to take potting orchids to the next level in this section. This was our simple one that we did with nothing more than the plant potted in the foam with some moss. So for the next step, we've got our container already foamed, and this time I put some wedges around the centerpiece of foam so I'd have more of a complete surface to work on, because you want a place to set all your mosses so they don't fall down inside the pot. So those little wedges are going to make that happen. To begin, of course, then we'll start with our mosses to cover the mechanics, and I generally start with this sheet moss. It's dyed because it'll stay nice throughout the life of the arrangement. It's nice and thin, and I can incorporate the other mosses on top of it, but it instantly gives a good cover on the foam so that you don't have any of that showing. And again, I like to loosen it up a little bit so it's easier to get the materials through. So we can then take this and just kind of push it around the foam. And as we insert all the stems through the moss, it's going to hold it in place, so you really don't have to pin it. But if you find that it's easier to have it very stable, you certainly can do so using the little fern pins to hold it in position. To begin the plants in this, we of course have our materials already styled, and this happens to be an orchid that has the foliage and the stem separately. With this being a single orchid plant, we will work this in the middle of the container. So we'll insert the stem right into the center of the foam, pushing it down tight so that it looks really well connected to the horizon line, or the top of the moss there. And we've got this going on. Push the little roots down around the plant. And then we want to take and tuck this stem as close to the plant as we possibly can. Some plants actually have an opening in the center of them that you insert the stem through, but many of them don't, so you will just put it right next to the plant, making it look as if it's growing through. So we want to kind of take a look at this and decide on the proportion that we want to make this, because it's obviously a little bit tall to put in the entire stem. So I think something about like that's going to look good. We can now cut this off using your wire cutters. And then put it in here and kind of see how you like the look of it. Make sure it's kind of the height that you want it to be when it's finished. Remembering we're going to have some of these beautiful little plants around the base, so that's going to kind of add some weight down here on the bottom so the flowers can be a little bit taller. Once you have that established, take it back out, put a little bit of pan glue on it, or glue gun glue, either one works, hot melt glue. And then reinsert it back in the hole it was in. And then that's ready to go. What you'll find with some of your orchids is that their stems tend to be a little bit wobbly, just like they are in real life. And so you'll want to stabilize that using a bamboo stick of some sort. This happens to be river cane, and it works very well. I like it because you can cut it with a knife. So we're going to just put it like this. You don't want it to be really obvious in the design, so it only needs to be as tall as necessary to hold the stem in place. So we can then make sure we have it the right height, use some hand glue, and insert that down beside the stem like so. And then we can take a small piece of raffia. You could also use plant string or anything that you like the look of. Just happens to be easy and nice and natural looking. And we can tie that to the river cane that way. And now the stem's stable and it's not going to flop around and get out of position. At this point, the plant looks pretty good just the way it is. You wouldn't have to do anything else to it if you didn't want to. It's just a pretty potted orchid. But to add a little more texture and some interest and make it a bit more of a, say, a planted garden, we can take the beautiful fern plants that we styled and add these to the design. They're on their own stems. Again, you can look at it this way. If it's too long, you'll need to cut it off. And otherwise, you can insert it on the stem the way it is. Inserting something with that much stem length, you won't have to glue it to make it stable, but you can if you want to make sure it can't move at all. I like to work in triangles in any design that's all round. If you work in threes, it automatically makes a circle and makes it work all the way around the design. So we've got those three little plants. Again, we can tuck this on this side. into the foam. And then you're going to find that you're going to want to bend your stems naturally, of course. Materials tend to grow up towards the sky, towards the sun, so we want to get them upright. And then lastly, we'll tuck this little one over here on our third section. Add some nice texture to that. And then if you'd like to add even a bit more texture, you can come in with some of the wonderful moss pads that we talked about in the moss section. And again, it sits there fairly well. You can use a little bit of pan glue, or to make sure it's good and stable, glue a wood pick into the bottom of it. And then this will insert into the foam. And then there's no way that this can move once you put that into the design. So maybe this side, we'll add a pretty little grouping of the reindeer lichen. Remember, it's better to put the materials in groups together so you don't end up with a polka dot effect. It puts more emphasis on the individual materials that way. And again, this is one of those things that it can be finished when you decide that it's finished. There's not a right or wrong with this, you're just looking for proportion. I think it would be pretty to have some little branches in here for a bit more texture. So we can take lastly and again, looking at your proportions on that, decide how tall you want it to be, and then we'll cut the stem to fit. And we can insert this then in the center of the pot beside the orchid plant, and kind of in a nice vertical position, weaving your flowers through it. We have a beautiful potted Phalaenopsis orchid ready to enhance perhaps an end table or the bar in a kitchen, completely finished. And you can see this one here with the beautiful green Vanda orchid. It's just another look in a different style of orchid plant. Thank you so much for joining us for Inspired Design Notes.